Moving on now, a wave of selling washed over many Asian stock markets on Thursday, with low volumes likely amplifying the effects of the rhetorical battle between the U.S. and North Korea. Selling was led by some of this year's best-performing markets. Hong Kong shares started sliding after a quiet first 30 minutes, sending the Hang Seng Index down 1.1% for the day. Other markets in the region began falling notably at about the same time as Hong Kong, and indexes in Korea and Taiwan, among the world's best performers of late, hitting record 27-year highs respectively, ended in the red. Markets in Australia and New Zealand, which rose on Wednesday as Asia-Pacific markets fell widely, ended slightly lower. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei 225 index slipped 0.1% as investors stayed cautious ahead of the three-day weekend. Well, let's take a breather from those numbers now. The trade surplus between the U.S. and China is on the increase, and it's one of the biggest concerns for Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump has linked the U.S. trade deficit with China to the Korean Peninsula situation, while China's former Vice Minister of Foreign Trade, Long Yong-tu, says the Sino-U.S. trade should not be politicized. U.S. President Donald Trump, in his latest tweets, linked the U.S. trade deficit with China to the Korean Peninsula situation, while China's former Vice Minister of Foreign Trade, Long Yong-tu, says the Sino-U.S. trade should not be politicized. Customs data show that foreign trade between China and the United States increased by 20.6% to 2.18 trillion yuan in the first half of this year, with the export and import up 18.4% and 27% respectively. Meanwhile, the trade surplus between the world's largest and second largest economy is actually increasing, which is one of the biggest concerns for Washington. Trump's administration recently threatened to investigate in China's intellectual property and trade policies because he thinks the United States has been hurt by China in these fields. However, Long Yong-tu, who is also the chief negotiator of China's WTO accession, says the U.S. side should address the trade imbalance in a professional way.
We have to address this imbalance of the trade in the process of development of the U.S.-China trade and laying emphasis on the increase of the trade volume between the two countries, especially laying emphasis on the increase of the export of the U.S. to the Chinese market.
Long believes some of the imbalance was caused by the so-called trade policy factors, and it becomes important to see how the policy issues could be resolved in order to smoothen the U.S. export to China. With globalization facing an increasing criticism around the world, some Western countries blame China as free riders of globalization. Long, however, thinks otherwise.
China's participation of globalization not only benefits China, but also benefits many other countries in the world.
Long believes when China benefits from the economic globalization, others benefit too, mostly because China has accumulated a lot of foreign exchange reserves and brings in a lot of capital and advanced technologies to other countries. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has announced the postponement of a decision on whether to approve the sale of the Chicago Stock Exchange to a group led by Chinese investors, despite a recommendation from its staff to certify the deal. The move further delays an effort to revitalize the 135-year-old market by transforming it into a U.S. listings outpost for Chinese companies. The three-member commission will vote on the exchange's application instead of allowing the SEC staff to decide the matter. The $20 million deal has already survived extensive scrutiny from U.S. lawmakers who are skeptical of a string of Chinese takeover bids of American firms. Business Incorporated returns in a moment. Please stay with us.